My name is Bradley, and I want to tell you a story about a girl. I had always thought there might be a chance for something more between us, but when I expressed myself, she looked me straight in the eyes and said, "We're better as friends," before turning around and walking away. I didn't argue or try to convince her otherwise. I just decided that if she wanted to be nothing more than friends, then I would treat her exactly like I treat any other casual acquaintance in my life. The funny thing is, she didn't see that coming at all. What happened next was something she never could have predicted. And to be honest, neither could I. I've known Vanessa for as long as I can remember. We grew up in the same neighborhood, just a few houses apart. Back then, we weren't particularly close. More like familiar faces you nod to when you pass on the street. But that changed the year our mothers became friends. They visited each other's homes, shared meals, and swapped family stories over cups of tea. That friendship between our mothers meant I started seeing Vanessa a lot more often. At first, it was nothing deep, just polite hellos when she came by with her mom or when I stopped by their place with mine. But the more time our families spent together, the less it felt like we were just neighbors. Our conversations slowly grew from awkward greetings to short chats, and before I knew it, there was a quiet familiarity between us. As the years went on, we found ourselves in the same spaces more often. That's how we went from being that boy and girl who lived down the street to people who genuinely knew each other, understood each other's quirks, and shared a bond that had quietly been building for years. When it was time for college, that's when our paths really split. I remember sitting with the list of universities in front of me and deliberately picking one far from home. I just wanted something different. It was my way of chasing independence, of seeing how I'd handle life when I didn't have my family or my old friends right around the corner. Vanessa, on the other hand, chose a university much closer to home. That meant she could still swing by her parents' house and still stay plugged into the life we'd both grown up in. We were heading in opposite directions without even realizing it. We kept in touch, sure, but it wasn't the kind of constant back and forth we'd had before. It was more like the occasional message here, a quick comment on each other's social media there. I started seeing pictures of her with this guy from her school. She'd post a shot of them at some event, smiling, and I'd feel this quiet sting in my chest. It wasn't that I thought she owed me anything, we weren't together, but I couldn't help wishing it was me in those pictures. I'd kept my feelings locked up, and seeing her with him made me wonder if I'd waited too long to say anything. Meanwhile, I wasn't exactly living like a monk. I had my own relationships in college, quick sparks that fizzled out just as fast. Some ended because we weren't a good match, others because my heart wasn't fully in it. In a way, they mirrored what most college romances are like, short-lived, a little messy, and more about figuring yourself out than building something lasting. When I graduated, I landed a job that brought me right back close to home. There was something comforting about being back in familiar surroundings. Vanessa, on her part, had been doing incredibly well for herself. She was working as a lawyer in one of the biggest law firms in the state. It didn't surprise me. She had always been sharp, focused, and determined. Seeing her succeed made me proud. Being back meant I started seeing her more often. Sometimes we catch up over coffee, and before I knew it, our old connection started to feel alive again. It was almost effortless, like picking up a conversation we had paused years ago. About a year after we'd both graduated, she ended things with her college boyfriend. I'm not going to lie, when I heard that, I was happy. I know that sounds selfish, but part of me felt like maybe this was finally my chance. I'd carried a quiet crush on her for so long, and now there was no one in that place I had wanted to be. Still, I didn't rush in and blurt out how I felt. Instead, I decided to take my time. I started being there for her more, offering to help with little things, making time to hang out, and making sure she knew she could count on me. I'd surprise her with small gestures, her favorite snacks, a coffee on a busy morning, a text checking in after a long day. I made sure my interest showed, but never so much that it scared her away. For months, I let this slow build happen. I was dropping hints, leaving little breadcrumbs of affection, hoping she'd follow them to where my heart had been for years. I thought I was being smart, patient, and setting the stage for something real to happen. Finally, One night I decided to stop playing games and just say out my feelings. For months, I'd been doing little things for Vanessa. I thought I was making it obvious. I thought she could see how much I cared, how much I wanted something more than friendship. But apparently I was wrong. That quiet evening, I don't even remember what we were talking about before I decided to just go for it. Although my heart was racing, I told myself that if I didn't speak now, I might never get the chance again. So I looked her in the eyes and told her, clearly, that I had feelings for her. I told her I didn't want just to be her friend, that I'd been wanting more for a long time. Her face froze for a moment, like I'd just told her something in another language. She said, almost confused, "Wait, what?" That reaction alone made me question everything. Had she really not noticed? All those hints I thought were so obvious. Were they just background noise to her? Or was she pretending not to know, until she had no choice but to respond? After a short pause, she gave an apologetic smile and said, "We're better as friends." Then she stood up, grabbed her phone from the table, and walked, leaving me there. I got the message loud and clear. She wasn't interested. That night ended faster than I thought it would. She didn't reach out the next day, or the day after, or at all. Weeks passed, and the only sign she was still alive came from her Instagram stories and Snapchat posts. I didn't interact with them, but I saw them. And that's when I noticed something. Here and there, she'd post pictures of her ex. Not just random photos, but ones with little teasing captions. It was obvious what she was doing. She was trying to reconnect with him. Seeing that hit me harder than I expected. It wasn't just that she'd rejected me. It was that her heart was already somewhere else, and it had been the whole time. And as much as I wanted to pretend it didn't bother me, it did. It stung. It made me feel like I had been a placeholder. Someone to fill the empty space until she could go back to the guy she really wanted. After everything, I told myself one thing. At least I spoke up, and I told her how I felt instead of keeping it bottled up for years. Yeah, the rejection stung. It cut deep. But honestly, holding it inside would have been worse. That would have been a slow kind of pain, the kind that eats at you in quiet moments. So in a strange way, I was glad I got my answer. After that night, I didn't chase her. She didn't reach out to me, so I didn't reach out to her. If she wanted me as just a friend, I decided to give her exactly that. And you know what? I started turning all that energy I used to pour into her back into myself. I spent more time with people who actually wanted me around. I threw myself into work, took on new projects, and learned a few new skills. I even started working out again, not because I wanted to impress her or anyone else, but because I wanted to feel better in my own skin. Those months after she walked away were tough at first, I'm not going to lie. But they turned out to be one of the most important times of my life. I stopped measuring my value by whether she noticed me. I stopped waiting for her name to pop up on my phone. And for the first time in a long while, I felt like I was living for myself, not for the hope of someone else's approval. 3 months after Vanessa told me we were better as friends, I was fully focused on my own life. I had gotten into a steady routine. I wasn't thinking about her anymore. Then one evening, my phone buzzed with a notification. It was a message from her on Instagram. She had replied to a story I'd posted, a short clip of me working out at the gym. Her message read, "Did you replace me with those girls in the gym?" I stared at it for a second, not really knowing if she was joking, teasing, or trying to be flirty. The tone felt playful, but there was also this strange edge to it, like she was suddenly trying to stake some kind of claim over me again. I didn't want to give her too much to work with, so I just sent back a simple laughing emoji. No words, no explanation, just something to acknowledge the message without opening the door for anything deeper. But she didn't stop there. A few minutes later, another message came in. This time she asked, "When did you stop being a gentleman and caring about me?" That one caught me off guard because she said it like I'd broken some sort of unspoken rule by not still treating her like the center of my attention. I could tell she was trying to stir up a little nostalgia, maybe even make me feel bad for moving on. And then she pushed further. "Is there a woman in your life?" At that point, I decided I wasn't going to let her steer the conversation like that. So I shot back, "Why do you care if I have a woman in my life?" I wanted her to answer that, before anything else. Her response? I miss you. I didn't let that slide without clarity, so I asked, since when? That's when her tone shifted. She acted like I'd just insulted her by questioning her feelings. She doubled down, saying something along the lines of how I had just stepped away and all that, making it sound like I was the one who walked away from her, conveniently forgetting that she was the one who told me we were better off as friends and cut off contact. It was almost surreal, seeing her flip the narrative like that. She was making it seem like I had abandoned her. And honestly, the only thing I felt at that moment was how much I didn't care anymore. I told her, I once wanted you in my life. You made it clear we were better off as friends. Back then, it hurt, but now I think you were right. I meant it. I wasn't being sarcastic or trying to make a point. I was just stating the truth. I had moved on, and I wasn't about to pretend otherwise. Apparently, she didn't like that answer. Almost immediately, she started flipping the whole thing around. She said I just couldn't handle rejection, that I should have tried harder, that I wasn't man enough to give up that easily. It was like she wanted to rewrite history so that my silence made me the bad guy. But I wasn't biting. I told her it was fine, because I simply wasn't interested anymore. That was it. No long explanations or defensiveness. That's when I realized I'd reached the point of complete detachment. She could say whatever she wanted. It just didn't affect me anymore. And when she got angry, I didn't feel the need to match her energy. I didn't care. After that exchange, she went quiet. No messages for about a week. Honestly, it felt like peace. The space between us didn't feel like a loss. It felt like breathing room. I wasn't willing to give up again. Later one night, my phone buzzed with a notification. I picked it up and saw her name on the screen. The message read, "Is this how you're going to let our friendship die?" I could tell she was trying to make it sound like we were both responsible for the distance between us, like I had somehow walked away from something valuable we shared. But the truth was, I had already decided there was nothing left to save. So I didn't reply. I just put my phone down and went back to what I was doing. Silence can be a powerful answer, and in that moment, mine spoke louder than any words could. About an hour later, another message came in. This time, it was longer. She wrote that back when I first confessed my feelings, she had still been holding onto the hope of getting back together with her ex. She admitted she hadn't really thought about how she and I would fit as a couple back then. But now, she said, she was ready to try things out. It felt less like she was suddenly in love with me, and more like her other options hadn't worked out. So she was circling back. I read it, sat there for a moment, and then typed out my reply. Move on. I don't feel the same way I felt back then. I didn't sugarcoat it or try to keep the door open. I wanted it to be clear that whatever she was looking for me was gone. After sending that message, I thought about how easily this could turn into a cycle. Her reaching out whenever she felt lonely, me being tempted to respond, and the whole thing dragging on. I didn't want that. I didn't want her popping back into my life whenever it suited her. So I blocked her number and then went through my social media to do the same. Instagram, Facebook, everything. No more messages and no more sudden appearances. It wasn't done out of anger. It was about protecting my peace. That night, I shut the door completely. Looking back at everything that happened with Vanessa, I can honestly say it taught me some things I probably wouldn't have learned if I'd kept my feelings to myself. The first lesson is simple but powerful. Don't keep your feelings locked up just because you're scared of the answer. I told her how I felt, and she rejected me. Yeah, it stung, but at least I wasn't stuck wondering, what if, for the rest of my life. I'd rather take a clear no than waste years guessing and holding on to hope that might never go anywhere. The second lesson is about what you do after rejection. I realized it's not an invitation to keep chasing or proving yourself to someone who has already made up their mind. For me, it was a sign to turn that energy inward, work on myself, spend time with people who actually enjoy having me around, and build a life where I don't have to beg for a place in it. Surrounding yourself with people who value you makes it a lot easier to let go of the ones who don't. And the third lesson, timing and genuine interest can't be forced. You can't convince someone to want you, and even if they change their mind later, you're allowed to decide you've moved on. Sometimes, The healthiest thing you can do is walk away when the dynamic shifts into something that doesn't feel right anymore. That's not weakness. That's protecting your peace. So that's my take. What about you? Have you ever been in a situation where someone only started caring when you stopped? Drop your thoughts in the comments. I'd love to see how you all see it.